The darkness between the stars was deep and endless, a vast cold sea where fragile worlds floated like tiny islands. Somewhere in that blackness, far from Earth, a small human colony named Haven was dying. The people of Haven were farmers, miners, and settlers. They were not soldiers. They had come to this distant planet to build peaceful lives, to raise their children under a warm sun, to grow food in rich soil. But now the skies above Haven burned red with fire, and shadows of monstrous alien ships blotted out the light. The colony's last transmission, a desperate call for help, crackled into the void.
Oh.
The voice on the recording trembled with fear. "This is Haven Colony. We are under attack. They are coming. We can't hold them. Please, if anyone hears this, help us." Then there was only static. Far across the cold gulf of space, its signal reached Earth. It pierced the atmosphere, bounced off orbiting satellites, and found its way into the heart of the Terran Defense Command. The world it came from was not famous.
Ow.
Most on Earth didn't even know Haven existed, but the message hit the right ears.
Ow.
In a hidden command center buried deep beneath frozen rock and steel, a small group of people listened to the recording again and again. They listened not to the words, but to the fear. The fear was unmistakable, the panic, the despair. They understood one thing very clearly. An enemy was moving, and now Earth would move too. There were no grand speeches, no flashing news reports. The signal did not reach the public. It didn't need to. Earth had already decided, long ago, what would happen if one of its children in the stars called for help. There would be a response. Swift. Merciless. Total. The people tasked with making that response happen were not politicians. They were not celebrities. They were Deathworlder soldiers from the most dangerous, most violent planet in the known galaxy. And when they moved, worlds shook. In the cold silence of orbit, black warships stirred from slumber. They were monstrous things, vast, angular, armed to the teeth. Ships built not for defense, but for annihilation. Their hulls were dark as midnight, bristling with weapons capable of glassing continents, tearing apart fleets and silencing entire civilizations. These were Earth's warships. Above them, smaller craft fighters, gunships, assault transports, woke. From sleep as well, systems blinking to life, engines humming. The people who flew them moved with cold precision, their faces hard, their eyes sharp. There was no need for questions. No one asked why. No one asked who. The signal was enough. One of theirs had called for help, and the Deathworlders were already on the move. Somewhere deep within the fleet's flagship, the commander stood alone in front of a massive display. The signal from Haven played on a loop. Screams, the static, the fear. His jaw was tight. His fists clenched behind his back. He had seen this before, too many times to count. Alien forces thinking they could prey on human worlds, thinking that Earth was weak, thinking that humanity would not fight back. They always thought the same, and they always learned too late. The commander gave the order in a voice cold as ice. Mobilize, full strike fleet. No mercy. The order rippled through the fleet like a shockwave. Engines flared to life, lighting the void with blue fire. Hulls groaned as weapons deployed, targeting systems locked, and crews prepared for battle. It was not just the machines that moved. It was the people. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were Deathworlders. Born from a world of violence and storms, predators and danger, humanity's homeworld was a death world, the most lethal cradle of life known. Everything on Earth could kill. Its animals, its plants, its viruses, its weather. To survive there was to become something hard, something fast, something ruthless. And now that ruthlessness was on the march, the fleet began to accelerate engines. Pushing harder, faster, the stars blurred into lines. Hyperspace gates opened like glowing wounds in the blackness. One by one, the warships vanished into the tunnels of faster-than-light travel, streaking toward the burning colony of Haven. It would not take long. It's not with the technology Earth had built in secret. It's not with the speed of their ships, the strength. of their weapons. The people of Haven were not alone anymore. The call for help had been answered. But the ones coming were not saviors in shining armor. They were Deathworlders. The galaxy knew their name. On Haven, the skies continued to burn. The alien invaders, brutal creatures with armored hides and insect-like claws, crushed human defenses with cruel efficiency. They took no prisoners, showed no mercy. The colony's defenses were laughable against the sheer weight of alien war machines. Whole towns were reduced to ash. Civilians fled in terror, hiding in forests, in caves, wherever they could. They all knew the truth. They would not survive much longer. The enemy was closing in, and in the shadows of those burning forests, children cried while parents whispered broken prayers. But then something shifted. A faint glow in the distant sky, a shimmer of blue light, the first ripple of hyperspace distortion, the first sign that something was coming. The aliens noticed it too. Their scouts reported strange readings anomalies in orbit. Their commanders scoffed. Earth would never send help in time, they thought. Humanity was weak, soft, unprepared. They had crushed human colonies before. They would crush this one too. They laughed as their war machines marched through ruined towns. But the Deathworlders were closer than anyone imagined, closer than the enemy feared. And when they came, they would not come as diplomats. They would come as hunters in the flagship, as the stars whipped past in hyperspace. The commander stared at the map of Haven. His eyes were sharp, his voice low. "Prepare for drop," he said. "We make orbit in 10 hours. The bridge crew nodded, their hands moving over controls. Fleet was nearly in position. The killing would begin soon, and far ahead, on that dying colony, the survivors huddled beneath smoke-filled skies. Some whispered that no help would come. Some prayed. Some wept. But none of them knew what was racing toward them through the stars. None of them knew the name. The galaxy whispered in fear. Deathworlders. The signal had been heard. The answer was already on its way. The fleet moved through hyperspace like silent predators, black holes cutting through the fabric of reality with terrifying speed. The vast warships carried the weight of Earth's fury, cold and merciless. Each vessel loaded with enough firepower to reduce cities to ash and tear planets apart. Inside those ships, the Deathworlders prepared in silence, every man and woman knowing what lay ahead. They had done this before, too many times, but it never got easier. The signal from Haven still echoed in their minds, the fear, the desperation, the final screams before silence. They all knew what it meant. The enemy on that distant colony had no intention of mercy, and neither would they in the command deck of the flagship. Commander Rourke stood motionless, his face hard as steel. His eyes locked on the growing image of Haven as it appeared on the holographic display. The planet's surface burned in patches fires, spreading across forests, cities reduced to twisted metal and broken stone. Life signs flickered on the sensors, weak and fading. The aliens were still there, still hunting, still killing. Rourke's jaw tightened. He knew the kind of creatures they were dealing with, another predatory species that thought it could prey on humans without consequence. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had forgotten what Earth truly was. They had forgotten the meaning. Of Deathworld, the bridge was filled with quiet intensity. Officers in dark uniforms moved with sharp, efficient precision. The lights above glowed dim red as the ship entered combat readiness. Across the fleet, thousands of soldiers, humans, born on the deadliest planet in the known galaxy, checked weapons, sealed armor, and readied themselves to drop into fire. There were no cheers, no bravado, only silence and focus. Deathworlders did not fight for glory. They fought to survive. And they fought to win. Commander Rourke's voice broke the silence. Low, calm, deadly. Status report. An officer straightened. Fleet is locked. All systems green. Ground teams standing by for immediate deployment. Rourke nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the burning planet. 10 minutes to drop. All units prepare. Far below, on the surface of Haven, the enemy hulking creatures of scale and bone, twice the height of a man, continued their assault. The alien war machines rolled across the ground, spewing plasma and fire, leaving nothing alive in their wake. Human survivors, huddled in ruined shelters and shattered towns, could only pray. The colony's defenders had been crushed in the first wave. The civilians who remained knew the truth. They were next. There was no one left to save them, or so they believed. The first sign came without warning. A crack in the sky. Sudden burst of white-hot light. Then another and another. The invaders looked up in confusion as the atmosphere split open and black shapes screamed down from orbit. The Deathworlders had arrived. The drop pods hit the ground like meteor strikes, slamming into earth and metal with bone-shaking force. Before the dust could settle, the first human soldiers emerged stall, armored in dark steel, faces hidden behind visors that glowed cold blue. They moved with terrifying precision, weapons raised, advancing without hesitation. The alien soldiers used two breaking human defenders, easily opened fire in panic. Out. But the Deathworlders didn't break. They didn't even flinch. The first shots from Earth's weapons tore through alien armor as if it were paper. Plasma burned through flesh, explosive rounds shattered bone. The Deathworlders moved like predators, fast and lethal, taking down the enemy with brutal efficiency. Alien soldiers screamed. Some tried to flee, some fought to the last breath. It made no difference. The Deathworlders didn't stop from the sky. More pods rained down, each one delivering fresh squads of humanity's finest killers. The black shapes of gunships roared overhead, shredding enemy vehicles with pinpoint missiles and heavy cannon fire. The battlefield was chaos flames of blood, smoke butt through it all. The Deathworlders advanced without fear, without mercy. In one ruined town, a young girl huddled beneath the broken remains of a building. She clutched her little brother, her eyes wide with terror as the sounds of battle roared outside. The ground shook, the sky flashed. She waited for death. But instead a black-armored soldier appeared through the smoke, taller than any man she had ever seen, moving like a machine of war, his armor scarred but unbroken. The girl gasped, certain this was another nightmare. But then the soldier knelt, his voice calm but firm. "You're safe now," he said. "We've got you." Tears filled her eyes as strong hands lifted her and her brother from the rubble. Behind the soldier, more Deathworlders poured through. The ruins, securing streets, cutting down alien resistance with precise bursts of fire. The monsters who had burned her town were dying. Humans had come. Real humans, or the ones the enemy truly feared. In orbit, Commander Rourke watched the ground feeds with cold satisfaction. The enemy was breaking faster than he expected. They always did. Once they saw what Deathworlders were truly capable of, their will collapsed. The fear spread like wildfire. Always ended the same way. Rourke's voice was quiet, almost soft as he spoke. No prisoners. The officers around him didn't blink. The order was clear. The enemy had brought fire to a human colony. They would leave in ashes. Across Haven's burning landscapes, the slaughter continued. The aliens, who had thought themselves unstoppable, now found themselves hunted. Human war machines rolled through their ranks. Infantry squads cleared bunkers. One by one, no mercy, no hesitation. Every survivor rescued. Every enemy annihilated. The name whispered in dark corners of the galaxy Deathworlders was now real to these invaders, and they understood too late what it meant. The hours stretched into night as the fires burned higher. As the alien commanders, desperate, broadcast surrender signals. They begged for ceasefire. They offered retreat, but Earth did not answer. The Deathworlders had no interest in surrender. This was not just war. This was a message by dawn. The last alien strongholds were gone. The battlefield lay silent, littered with broken machines, twisted bodies, and the black shadows of human soldiers standing watch. The people of Haven, those who had survived, emerged slowly from hiding. They looked around at the devastation, at the armored figures moving through the smoke. For the first time in days, they felt something they thought they'd lost. Hope. Commander Rourke's voice echoed through every comlink on the planet. Cold, Final. Haven is secured. Begin recovery. No enemy assets survive. And somewhere, far across the stars and the dark councils of other alien empires, the message spread in whispers. Earth had moved. The Deathworlders had awakened. Nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy had called for help. The monsters from the Deathworld had answered. The sky above Haven was no longer the same. What once was blue and endless now glowed with unnatural fire, twisted by the smoke of burning forests and shattered cities. The air was thick with ash, the ground littered with ruin. From horizon to horizon, destruction stretched in every direction. And the few survivors left alive could only watch in numb terror as death marched across their world. The alien invaders had crushed the colony without mercy, tearing through defenses and civilian shelters alike, leaving nothing but broken bodies and silent ruins. It seemed certain that Haven would fall, just another forgotten tragedy in the cold emptiness of space. But then the sky changed again, this time with something far worse than the enemy could ever imagine. It started as a hum, a vibration in the air too deep to hear, but strong enough to feel. The invaders, their monstrous machines clanking through burning streets, paused. Their blackened eyes turned upward, confused, their clawed hands tightening around weapons. The humans hiding in cellars and rubble looked up too. Their faces streaked with dirt and blood, their breath caught in their throats. Above them, the clouds split apart, and in their place came darkness. A darkness alive with movement. Dozens of shapes. Hundreds. Shadows upon shadows. The Deathworlders had arrived. Earth's war fleet fell from the heavens, in perfect silence, massive black ships. Sharp and angular, sliding through the atmosphere like blades. The largest vessels were kilometers long, their engines lighting the sky with cold blue fire. Their hulls bristling with weapon ports and glowing shields. Round them swarmed smaller craft. Assault carriers, gunships, fighters. The alien invaders froze, their primitive minds struggling to understand the sheer scale of what they were seeing. This was not an army. This was not even a fleet. This was extinction. The first wave of drop pods hit the ground like meteors. The earth shook beneath the impact. Dust and fire erupted into the air. Before the invaders could react, the pods opened, and the Deathworlders emerged, tall, armored, silent. Each soldier, a walking engine of war, faces hidden behind cold visors, weapons held steady. They moved with terrifying calm, advancing through the smoke, cutting down anything that moved. The aliens roared in panic, unleashing volleys of plasma and projectile fire, but it was useless. The Deathworlders did not fall. They did not hesitate. They killed with precision, with cold efficiency, the kind of mechanical brutality that sent pure terror rippling through the enemy ranks. From orbit, Commander Rourke watched every second unfold. His face was carved from stone, his voice calm as he issued orders. Secure the landing zones. Prioritize civilian extraction. Exterminate all hostiles. The fleet's massive guns barked to life, vaporizing alien war machines from miles above. Railguns, the size of skyscrapers, fired hypersonic rounds that tore enemy armor apart as if it were paper. Missiles streaked through the skies, painting burning trails as entire alien battalions were wiped from existence in blinding explosions. The Deathworlders on the ground pressed forward without pause. They moved like a tide, unrelenting, unstoppable, merciless. In the chaos, a squad of Deathworlders advanced through a ruined settlement, stepping over broken walls and shattered bodies. Their leader, a towering soldier named Vance, spotted movement in the rubble. A group of terrified civilians, half-starved, bleeding, eyes wide with disbelief. Vance lifted a gauntlet hand. Civilians, get them to the evac points. He ordered through his comms. One of his team broke off instantly, moving toward the survivors, handing them emergency beacons. The civilians could barely speak. One of them, a middle-aged man, stammered, Are you real?" His voice cracked. "We thought no one would come." Vance's voice came cold through the helmet. "We're here," he said simply. Stay close. We'll get you out. But even as evac shuttles began descending under heavy escort, the enemy rallied. Alien commanders screamed orders in their guttural tongue, sending wave after wave of soldiers against the human lines. It was a slaughter. The Deathworlders held their ground with terrifying ease, cutting down hundreds without losing a single step. They were faster, smarter, stronger, and far, far more dangerous. The aliens tried to bring in heavier units, massive biomechanical walkers, bristling with cannons and spines, but from the sky, Earth's aerospace fighters swooped in like hawks. Rail slugs and missiles tore the walkers apart before they even reached the front lines. The battlefield became a graveyard of smoldering wreckage, broken bodies, and rivers of smoke. The Deathworlders moved through it all without fear, without doubt. They had seen worse. They had come from worse. This was what they were made for. Somewhere deep within one of the alien command bunkers, the enemy leader, a massive, clawed monstrosity known as a Krath, Lord, watched the feeds in horror. Its subordinates hissed and shrieked, demanding new strategies, new weapons, new hope, but there was none. The Krath Lord knew it. It saw the way the Deathworlders moved, the way they struck without hesitation, without mercy, without even the pretense of negotiation. This was no ordinary species. This was something else, something primal, something born on a world where survival was war and peace was a myth. The Krath Lord's voice trembled as it whispered the name spoken only in fear among the stars, humans. As night fell over Haven, the Deathworlders pressed deeper into enemy territory. Their guns burned hot. Their armor was scorched and battered, but they did not stop. There was no retreat, no surrender. Every inch they took was held. Every life they saved was protected. Every enemy they met was destroyed. The people of Haven, watching from their hiding places, could barely comprehend what they were witnessing. These were not the humans they had known. These were predators in human skin. Cold, unstoppable, Deathworlders. Commander Rourke's voice echoed across the fleet's channels. Phase 1 complete. Ground control secured. Evacuations underway. All units hold positions. Phase 2 will commence at dawn. The soldiers acknowledged the order. Around them, the burning remains of the alien invasion force littered the ground. The screams had faded. The enemy had been broken, at least for now, and far across the galaxy, in shadowed empires and distant star nations. The news spread like wildfire. Earth had answered the call. The Deathworlders were on the move. The message was clear. When humanity comes, it comes to end you. And it never stops. The dawn over Haven did not bring peace. It brought something far worse. The first light of morning spilled across a shattered landscape, burned forests, ruined cities, the twisted wreckage of alien war machines. The air was still thick with smoke, the ground soaked with ash and blood. The few surviving colonists, huddled in makeshift shelters, could only watch in silence as the Deathworlders moved through the rubble like silent shadows. Their black armor gleamed in the rising sun, their weapons held with calm precision, their faces hidden behind visors that reflected only fire and death. The battle was not over. Killing was only beginning. In orbit, the fleet hovered like giants, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. Inside the flagship, Commander Rourke stood at the center of the command deck, his eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed every inch of Haven. His voice was cold, steady, without hesitation. Phase 2, full strike, no mercy. The order rippled outward. On the ground, the Deathworlders prepared. Massive dropships descended in silent waves, offloading tanks, mobile artillery, advanced combat drones. Every weapon Earth had forged in its dark factories, every instrument of war sharpened through centuries of conflict was now being unleashed. The soldiers of Earth moved without fear, without pause, because they knew who they were. They came from the Deathworld, the planet where even the wind could kill, where predators ruled the wild places, where survival was written into the bones of every living thing. Out here on this soft colony world, there was something more than human. They were apex predators, the alien invaders, desperate after the brutal losses of the previous night, tried to regroup. In the deep valleys and ruined cities, they massed their remaining forces, gathering what heavy weapons they could, erecting crude defenses. They knew they could not win, but they still clung to the primal instinct to fight, to survive. They had not yet fully understood the nature of the enemy that awakened. The first strike came like a hammer blow from the sky, from orbit. Earth's warships unleashed their opening barrage columns of fire and metal that rained down with surgical precision. Explosions lit the landscape, flattening entire alien formations before they could even react. The ground shook. Mountains trembled. The sky turned red with flame. The aliens screamed orders, their commanders bellowing for retreat, for regrouping, for resistance. But none of it mattered. The Deathworlders were already moving. Through the burning craters. Through the shattered remains of enemy vehicles, the soldiers of Earth advanced. It's not in chaotic charges, not in disorganized rushes, but in cold, methodical waves. Every step was calculated. Every shot was precise. They hunted, not fought. They stalked through the battlefield, like wolves through snow, silent and lethal. Alien soldiers creatures, twice the size of a man, armored in thick carapace, armed with brutal plasma rifles, fell one by one, not because they were weak, but because the Deathworlders were something else entirely. Squad by squad. The human forces cut deeper into the enemy lines. Plasma fire lanced through the smoke, but the Deathworlders moved too fast, too low, too hard. When enemy trenches appeared, they were overrun in seconds. When alien mechs rolled into view, they were shattered by railgun fire before their weapons could lock on. Every alien strategy failed. Every defensive line collapsed. The Deathworld soldiers knew how to fight, and they knew how to win. In one sector, a particularly fierce pocket of alien resistance tried to hold a city square. Dozens of alien warriors crouched behind barriers of metal and debris, their weapons trained on the narrow streets that led toward them. For a moment it seemed as if they might hold. But then the sound of footsteps echoed through the smoke, slow, deliberate, unhurried. The aliens tensed. A single Deathworlder stepped into view. He stood tall, black armor gleaming, his massive rifle resting easily in his hands. He paused, motionless. The alien leader barked a command. Every gun opened fire. Plasma bolts roared through the air, scorching stone and metal. The figure vanished into smoke. For a heartbeat, the aliens thought they had destroyed him. Then the killing began. From the side streets, from above. From below, Deathworlders emerged like phantoms, moving too fast to follow. The aliens fell in droves, their bodies ripped apart by high-caliber rounds, by razor-sharp drones, by blades that cut through armor as if it were cloth. In under 60 seconds, the entire square was silent. Only human soldiers remained, checking. Weapons, scanning for survivors, none were found. The surviving colonists, those hidden in basements and tunnels, heard the sounds of battle, but did not fully understand what was happening. All they knew was that the terrifying alien presence that had haunted them for days was vanishing. The monstrous shapes that had once crushed their homes were now nothing but smoking wreckage, and in their place moved cold, silent figures in black. Humans, or something close enough. Commander Rourke watched the feeds from his command chair, his expression unreadable. His voice was calm as he spoke. All units report. Zone 1 secured, came the reply. Zone 2 secured. Zone 3 resistance neutralized. Rourke gave the smallest nod. Good. Proceed to Phase 3. Wipe them out. Even as the last words left his mouth, the alien command networks began to collapse. Panicked transmissions flooded the airwaves, calls for retreat, for evacuation, for surrender. But no one was listening. The Deathworlders had made their decision the moment they received the distress call. There would be no escape. The invaders would not leave this planet alive. Throughout the battlefield, the tempo of the assault shifted from methodical advance to brutal extermination. Heavy artillery rolled forward, pounding remaining strongholds into rubble. Gunships, prowled the skies, hunting retreating units with cold efficiency. Special forces teams infiltrated underground bunkers, clearing them room by room. There was no mercy. There were no survivors. One alien warlord, a towering beast of iron and flesh, tried to rally its troops atop a shattered ridge. It roared in defiance, lifting a blood-soaked banner, calling its warriors to stand. But the call died in its throat as a rail slug the size of a human arm punched through its skull from half a mile away. The banner fell, the troops scattered. Death followed. As the sun reached its peak, the battle was already over. The alien invaders once so confident, so savage, were gone. Their bodies lay broken across the fields, their machines burned too. Slag. The people of Haven, stepping cautiously from the ruins, could barely believe it. They had been saved. No, rescued was not the right word. They had been avenged. The Deathworlders did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They gathered the survivors, secured the ground, and waited for further orders. Their faces remained hidden behind their visors, their voices low, emotionless, and above it all, in the cold dark of orbit, the fleet watched. The message was clear. Earth had answered the call. The Deathworlders were far from finished. The war was not over. The first strike was only the beginning. The fires of Haven still burned, casting flickering shadows across a battlefield stained with blood and ruin. The sky hung heavy with smoke, lit by the cold glow of Earth's warships drifting silently overhead. The ground below was quiet now, the quiet of peace, but the eerie silence that follows devastation. The Deathworlders stood motionless in the aftermath, their black armor gleaming with dust and ash, their weapons still hot from hours of slaughter. Around them lay the broken bodies of the enemy, twisted metal, scorched alien flesh. The first strike was over, but it wasn't finished. Not yet. The surviving alien forces, what few remained, were on the run. Across Haven's scarred landscapes, the enemy staggered in retreat, broken and leaderless. Their monstrous machines shattered. Their war cries turned into desperate screams. The Deathworlders had crushed their first lines, destroyed their command structures, and shattered their morale with ruthless precision. But humans, especially those born of a death world, understood something primal. A wounded predator was still dangerous. The enemy was cornered, and cornered creatures could still lash out. Commander Rourke's voice came low over the fleet's secure channels, cold and emotionless as ever. "No escape," he ordered. "No survivors. The operation is not complete until the last hostile is neutralized." The soldiers of Earth, hearing the order, moved with mechanical precision. New strike teams were deployed. Faster, sharper, deadlier. The hunt was on. In the ruined lowlands, where forests once stretched across the valleys, alien warbands gathered in scattered pockets, trying to regroup. Their commanders, covered in black chitin and blood, snarled frantic orders. They still believed, somewhere, deep in their primitive minds, that survival was possible, that if they could hold one last line, if they could escape to the highlands or to orbit, they might live to fight another day. But the sky itself betrayed them. The shadows of Earth's ships still hung above. The Deathworlders were already moving. The first of the mobile hunter teams struck just before dawn. Without warning, human gunships swept low over the forest remnants, engines screaming, weapons blazing. Rail slugs tore through alien ranks. Drones dropped from the sky in coordinated patterns, shredding fleeing squads before they could even reach cover. The ground assault followed seconds later. Elite infantry squads, armored and relentless, moving with terrifying speed and lethal accuracy. The alien warriors, massive and brutal, fought back with savage ferocity, but their blows landed against steel, against hardened armor, against the cold discipline of Earth's finest killers. Plasma bursts glanced off reinforced plating. Claws and teeth met monoblades and railguns. The outcome was never in doubt. In one valley, a squad of Deathworlders moved through the wreckage of an alien convoy. Their footfalls were silent despite the size of their armored frames. At their front, a female soldier lieutenant, Hal, raised a hand, signaling her team to halt. She scanned the tree line with unblinking eyes behind her visor. Movement. The enemy was close. Without a word, the team shifted. They moved like one. Organisms flowing from cover to cover, rifles raised, eyes sharp. The aliens, thinking themselves hidden, launched an ambush, screaming as they charged through smoke and shattered trees. But the Deathworlders didn't panic. They didn't flinch. They opened fire with brutal calm, cutting the enemy down with pinpoint shots. When the last alien fell, Hale gave a single nod. Clear, move forward. The enemy didn't stand a chance. Word of the slaughter spread among the alien ranks. The invaders, once so confident, now spoke in hushed growls, their voices filled with terror. The stories passed from squad to squad, from broken commanders to trembling survivors, that humans weren't just winning, they were hunting. They didn't stop. They didn't sleep. They didn't break. They were something else entirely. Something built for one purpose, war without mercy. Back aboard the fleet's flagship, Commander Rourke monitored the progression of the battle. With cold efficiency, his eyes followed the holographic display as red enemy markers blinked out one by one. His voice remained quiet. Push them to collapse, he ordered. No safe zones, no fallback points. Press until they break entirely. And so the Deathworlders obeyed. Across Haven, every last enemy unit was hounded, cornered, and annihilated. There were only scattered pockets of alien resistance, each one falling faster than the last. In the mountain passes, in the shattered cities, in the ash-covered plains, the story was the same. The Deathworlders came. The enemy died, over and over. One alien general, his armored carapace cracked and bleeding, tried to rally a last stand on the slopes of a ruined industrial complex. His warriors, once hundreds strong, had been reduced to a few dozen. Still, he raised his clawed hand and roared in defiance. The humans would not take him. He would not fall without a fight. Moments later, the sky above the ridge cracked open. As a railgun slug from orbit vaporized half the hillside, the survivors, those who hadn't been torn apart by the blast, were gunned down by advancing human infantry seconds later. The general's broken corpse hit the dirt without fanfare. The last stand was over before it had truly begun. In the aftermath, the colonists of Haven, those who had somehow survived the nightmare, began to emerge from their hiding places. They walked through streets covered in alien wreckage and human war machines, their eyes wide, their hands trembling. They whispered to each other in disbelief. The invaders were gone, erased, not beaten back, not repelled, erased. The Deathworlders didn't celebrate. For the soldiers of Earth, this was not victory. It was duty. They moved through the aftermath in cold silence, gathering survivors, assessing damage, searching for any remaining threats. Their armor was scorched, their faces hidden, their movements precise. And when the civilians looked into the mirrored visors of their rescuers, they did not see heroes. They saw something older, something darker. They saw predators shaped by a world far more dangerous than any alien could imagine. Commander Rourke's final message echoed across every remaining channel on Haven, his voice calm, unshaken. The enemy has been neutralized. Civilian rescue is in progress. Hold all positions until full recovery is complete. In the skies above, the warships held their silent vigil. In the valleys below, the Deathworlders stood guard, their weapons still ready.
Oh.
And in the dark corners of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of this small colony, whispers began to spread. Whispers of Earth. Whispers of what happens when the children of the Deathworld rise. The enemy had broken. The Deathworlders were far from finished. Ask ChatGPT. The sun dipped low over the ruined world of Haven, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Smoke drifted through the broken forests and shattered cities, and the wind carried the bitter scent of burning metal, blood, and ash. The once beautiful colony world lay in ruins, its soil scarred, its people shattered, but the battle was not over. Not yet. In the darkness beyond the highlands, the last remnants of the alien force gathered for a final stand. They were broken, yes, by the relentless advance of Earth's Deathworlders, but they were not yet extinct. The largest concentration of the enemy, thousands of alien soldiers, war beasts. In command, elites had fallen back to a mountain fortress, a massive fortified base built into the rocky cliffs, surrounded by energy shields, anti-air guns, in trenches of monstrous machines. It was their last hope, their last line. If they fell here, they would fall forever. The Deathworlders knew it. From orbit, the black warships hung in the silent sky, their engines burning cold and steady. On the ground below, armored transports rolled into position, gunships prowled. The smoke and infantry units in black armor moved with quiet determination. The enemy was trapped. There would be no escape. The final blow was about to fall, in the command center of the flagship. Commander Rourke stood motionless before the glowing map of Haven. The alien fortress was marked in red, pulsing like a wound. On the planet's surface, his voice, calm and cold, broke the silence. This is their last stronghold. Crush them, all units, full assault. The words were simple, final. There would be no negotiations, no ceasefire. Mercy, the Deathworlders. Moved without hesitation, the assault began with fire from the sky. Railgun slugs the size of starships screamed down from orbit, now slamming into the mountain fortifications with earth-shaking force. Explosions lit the cliffs, sending stone and metal flying in molten shards. The aliens returned fire desperately, their anti-air batteries filling the sky with plasma and missiles, but it was too little, too late. Earth's gunships weaved through the fire like hawks, dropping precise payloads of devastation, clearing landing zones for the ground assault to follow. And then the soldiers came. Wave after wave of black-armored Deathworlders descended. Boots pounding into broken soil, their rifles blazing with cold precision. They advanced without fear, cutting through enemy trenches, demolishing bunkers, clearing kill zones with terrifying efficiency. The alien defenders, monstrous creatures of scale and claw, fought back with savage fury, but it was like trying to stop a flood with bare hands. The humans didn't stop. They didn't slow. They didn't break. In the lower trenches, one alien war, leader massive, armored, reeking of blood, rallied its troops, bellowing defiance as the Deathworlders advanced. Plasma fire lit the air. Explosions rocked the hillside. For a moment, it seemed that aliens might hold. But then the first of Earth's heavy exosuits stepped onto the field, towering machines of steel and guns, piloted by humans born to survive the deadliest planet in the galaxy. The exosuits opened fire, twin cannons thundering, wiping out entire squads of alien defenders in seconds. The war leader roared in rage, and then vanished in a cloud of fire as a missile struck home. The fortress began to collapse. The Deathworlders pressed upward, unit by unit, step by bloody step. They moved like machines, tactical, merciless, unshaken by the chaos around them. Alien reinforcements threw themselves into the fight, screaming in desperation, but the humans didn't waver. When alien mechs charged the line, Earth's railguns split them apart, and the enemy unleashed monstrous bio-creatures. Earth's drones swarmed them like locusts, cutting flesh from bone. In the midst of the battle, Lieutenant Hale and her squad pushed through a breached wall, weapons raised, breathing hard but steady. They found a group of alien civilians, smaller, unarmed, creatures cowering in fear. Hale gave the signal. Her team held fire. Non-combatants, she murmured over comes. Mark for evac. Even in this war, even in the cold brutality of Deathworlder doctrine, the innocent were spared. But beyond the civilian tunnels, the last alien commanders made their final stand. The high citadel at the fortress's heart blazed with shields and cannons. The alien leaders, twisted creatures of bone and armor, roared in defiance, pouring every last weapon, every last soldier into the defense. They had come to understand too late what they faced. Not just an army, not just humans, but the apex predators of a death world. A species that had survived its own planet survived extinction. Starvation, war, worsened, emerged stronger, harder, deadlier. And now that species was at their gates. The final push came at dusk. Earth's heavy. Tanks rumbled into position, their guns turning the last bunkers into molten craters. Special operations teams infiltrated the inner citadel, planting charges, breaching walls. The enemy fell back step by step, howling in fury and terror. And then, at last, the shield generators collapsed. The citadel's walls split open. Fire poured through the breach. The Deathworlders entered without a word. Inside the fortress, the last alien warlords fought with savage desperation, claws, teeth, plasma blades. It didn't matter. The humans cut them down without mercy. Precision. Shots, blades through throats, explosives in sealed chambers. It was over in minutes, and when the final gunshot echoed through the burning halls, silence fell at last. The surviving alien civilians were pulled from the ruins, hands raised in terror. The Deathworlders ignored their fear. They'd come for the soldiers. The threat was gone. Survivors would live above the battlefield. As fires burned and the last embers of resistance died, Commander Rourke gave the final order, his voice. It was cold, unshaken. Enemy neutralized. All sectors secure. Begin recovery. The war was over, but across the galaxy, those who watched from afar whispered in fear. They spoke of what had happened on Haven. They spoke of the species that answered a call for help not with words, but with annihilation. They spoke of Deathworlders, and they knew the galaxy had changed forever. Earth had risen, and nothing would ever be the same. The fires still burned across the mountains of Haven, painting the night sky in flickering red and gold. The battle was over, the enemy crushed, their last stronghold reduced to twisted wreckage and smoldering ash. Yet the Deathworlders stood watch. Over the ruined landscape, their dark armor lit by the fading glow of destruction, their rifles still warmed from the fight. But even in victory, there was no celebration, no cheers. No sound but the crackle of distant fires and the low hum of Earth's warships circling silently above. Commander Rourke stood at the heart of the command post. Eyes cold, face lit by the faint green glow of tactical maps. Reports scrolled across. The screen's anemone eliminated, civilian extractions complete, casualties minimal. The mission, by every measure, was a success. Yet his expression didn't change. He knew what came next. This was only the beginning. Status, he said quietly. Planet. Secured, came the reply. All enemy combatants confirmed, neutralized. Evacuation transports are lifting the last survivors, no remaining resistance. Rourke nodded once, slowly. He didn't need to ask about damage. Images told the story well enough. Entire cities burned, forests blackened, rivers choked with ash and wreckage. Haven was alive, but scarred forever. And somewhere in distant alien capitals, there would be those watching, those listening, those who now knew without doubt what it meant. To draw the attention of Earth, the Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and they had answered in full. Across the planet, Earth soldiers moved through the aftermath. In the broken towns, they guided survivors toward evac ships. In the deep valleys, where the last alien corpses still smoked, they swept for traps and hidden threats. Movements were the same as always, silent, methodical, precise. Even when the fighting was over, the Deathworlders remained what they had always been, relentless. In the ruins of one small colony town, Lieutenant Hale paused beside a collapsed shelter where children, pale and trembling, clung to the remains of what had once been home. She knelt, her visor sliding back to reveal tired eyes. "You're safe now," she said softly. The words were simple. But the children, too numb to speak, only nodded, clutching each other as medical teams moved in. Hale's squad stood nearby, weapons still raised, watching the dark with careful eyes. They knew better than to relax too soon. Every soldier here had seen what the galaxy was capable of. Every one of them carried the weight of a death world on their shoulders. They had come from a planet where the wilderness could kill you faster than any alien weapon, where life itself was a daily war. And now that war had followed them into the stars, the rescue shuttles lifted one by one, carrying the last of Haven's survivors into orbit. The people of the colony, those who lived, would never forget the day the sky burned. They would never forget the black ships, the black armor, the cold, silent faces of the Deathworlders who saved them. But more than that, they would never forget the message written in blood across the soil. Earth does not forgive. Earth does not forget. In the flagship's command deck, the communications officer turned with a brief nod. "All transmissions are ready, sir." Commander Rourke's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood the weight of this moment. The galaxy was watching. The enemy species who had invaded this colony, what was left of them, would be watching too. And so would others. Empires, alliances. Those who still doubted what Earth could do. Broadcast it, Rourke ordered. His voice was soft, but unshakable. The message that followed was simple, brutal, and clear. This is Earth's command. Attack on the Haven colony has been answered. Hostile forces have been neutralized. Let this serve as warning to all species. Who would bring violence to human worlds? We will not be prey. We will not be silent. And we will not stop. The words echoed across the stars. Every corner of space, every listening station, every political chamber, every empire heard it. The Deathworlders had spoken, and far across the galaxy, in the cold heart of distant alien governments, fear took root. The name Earth was whispered in new tones, no longer as a curiosity, no longer as a distant minor power, but as a nightmare, a power that could not be reasoned with. Species that, when pushed to the edge, unleashed something worse than war, extinction. On Haven, the soldiers of Earth began to withdraw. Dropships lifted from the blackened ground, carrying battle-scarred warriors back to orbit. The machines of war were loaded back into carriers. The skies grew quiet once more. Deathworlders, silent behind their visors, left without fanfare. They had done what they came to do. They would be ready when the next call came. In the final hours, as the last shuttles climbed through the smoky atmosphere, one young colonist stood atop the broken remains of her home, watching the ships vanish into the clouds. Her hands clutched a torn photograph, family lost in the first wave of the invasion. Her eyes were red with tears, her heart hollow from grief. And yet, somewhere beneath that grief, something else stirred. Spark. The knowledge that she was alive because Earth had come, because Deathworlders had stood between her and annihilation. And in the deepest part of her heart, she knew she would never see the galaxy the same way again, in orbit. The Black Fleet turned silently toward the stars, engines igniting, leaving the ruined world behind. Haven was saved. But the galaxy would never forget what happened here. The predators of Earth, the monsters, forged in the fires of the deadliest planet known. Space had awoken, and they were watching. The black warships of Earth vanished into the cold, dark sky, their engines burning like distant blue stars as they left the ruined colony world of Haven behind. Below them, the fires still smoldered, and the shattered remnants of cities lay silent. Beneath the ash-filled wind, the battle was over. The enemy was gone. But the memory of what had happened here, the sheer brutality of Earth's response, would never be forgotten. It's not by the survivors. It's not by the galaxy. In the stillness of the aftermath, the people of Haven began to emerge from the ruins. There, eyes hollow, their bodies bruised but alive. The air still reeked of burning metal and broken stone. The ground still littered with the twisted corpses of alien invaders, but slowly, cautiously, life returned. The human survivors stood in the debris of their old lives, and though their faces were marked by fear and loss, they were not broken. They had seen the darkest terror the stars could bring, and they had seen the answer, the Deathworlders, for the first time since the invasion began. There was no sound of gunfire, no screams, no explosions. The only noise was the distant crackle of dying flames and the quiet sobs of those who realized, at last, they were saved. Families clung to one another. Children sat in stunned silence. Faces looked to the sky, where the black ships had vanished. And though not every family had survived, not every life had been spared, the colony still stood. But across the galaxy, the echoes of this war had already begun to spread. in distant alien empires, in hidden command chambers and vast stellar councils. The story of Haven raced like wildfire. The broadcast from Earth's the cold, unflinching message delivered by Commander Rourke had been heard by every corner of known space. It was not a threat, it was not diplomacy, it was a warning written in blood and fire. If you strike at Earth, if you harm its people, the predators of the death world will come for you, and they will not stop until you are ashes beneath their boots, in the highest towers of alien governments. Military commanders and political leaders watched the footage of the battle in stunned horror. They saw black-armored humans moving through smoke and fire without fear. They saw alien armies once thought invincible, torn apart in ours. They saw the cold, ruthless precision of a species that had evolved on the most savage world ever known, and for the first time, they understood what they were truly dealing with. The Deathworlders were not conquerors. They were not diplomats. They were something older, something worse. They were survival itself. On Haven, as rescue ships ferried the last civilians to safety, one small group of survivors gathered near the smoking remains of the colony's central plaza. Among them stood an old man, his hands calloused from farming, his face lined with exhaustion. He had lived on Haven since its founding. He had seen the invasion begin. He had watched his home burn. And now he had lived to see the Deathworlders. "Come. They didn't leave us," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Beside him, others nodded silently. No one spoke the words aloud, but every survivor understood. The galaxy might see Earth as a distant world, a backwater, a dangerous oddity of evolution. But when Haven's call for help was sent, when the universe offered only silence, it was Earth that answered, and not with words, fire. Far above, in the flagship that now orbited the stars beyond Haven, Commander Rourke sat alone in his quarters. The battle was won. The mission was complete. But his eyes remained cold, his mind distant. He knew what was coming. This was not the end. He activated the secure communications panel, sending encrypted reports back to Earth. Already whispers from intelligence networks spoke of new tensions, new alliances forming. Other species, those who had watched Haven burn from afar, were now beginning to calculate, to fear, would plan revenge, some would plot avoidance. And some would wonder if humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. Rourke's hand tightened into a fist. They didn't understand. Not yet. Humanity didn't want war, didn't seek conquest. It had answered Haven's call because humans knew what it meant to be prey. They knew what it meant to face extinction. And when pushed, when cornered, the people of Earth became something that no alien species could ever truly comprehend. The Deathworlders were not conquerors. They were the last line between survival and annihilation. And they would always answer. The call dot down on Haven's surface in the ruins of the old city. The survivors began to rebuild, slowly, brick by brick, stone by stone. The scars of war would never fully fade, but life, fragile and stubborn, always found a way. The Deathworlders were gone, but their shadow remained. The memory of black armor and mirrored visors, the sound of boots crunching through rubble, the endless, unstoppable advance of predators forged in the fires of Earth. The children of the colony, too young to truly understand, played among the broken streets. They pointed at the blackened hulls of alien wreckage, at the sky where the ships had vanished, and they whispered stories of the warriors who came from the stars, the silent soldiers who saved them, heroes, monsters, Deathworlders, and, far away, across the stars, the galaxy watched, and it remembered. The next time Earth was called upon, no one would be surprised. Because now, the galaxy knew the truth. When humanity comes, it comes as a storm, and it never, ever stops.